When 3 HOA officers tried to force their way into my backyard, they assumed they were dealing with just another pushover homeowner. They didn't know they'd picked a fight with a Marine who'd spent years serving overseas and who wasn't, about to let a handful of self-important bullies trample over his rights on his own property. I'd only been in my new neighborhood for 6 months when the Homeowners Association started sniffing around. At first, I thought the HOA here was managed about just a group of neighbors making sure lawns were cut and trash bins weren't left out too long. But I quickly learned that this particular HOA wasn't about community or standards. It was about control. The first red flag came when I received a violation notice for having an unauthorized structure in my backyard. That so-called structure. A small wooden pergola I'd built with my own hands, stained to match the house, and barely visible unless you were standing right next to my fence. I'm a Marine. Precision and craftsmanship are in my blood. The pergola was perfect. When I called the HOA office, I was told I needed to grant officers access to inspect the yard. I laughed and said, "Not happening without a court order." That apparently didn't sit well with them. Weeks went by, and I noticed board members, especially a woman named Marjorie.
Wait.
Called HOA Karen, walking slowly past my house, peering over the fence like vultures. It was intrusive, but I brushed it off. I wasn't going to let busybodies ruin the home I'd worked hard to buy, but things escalated fast. One hot afternoon, I was in the garage working on my motorcycle when I heard loud voices at the side of my house. Stepping outside, I saw 3 HOA officers standing at my fence with clipboards. "You need to unlock this gate," one of them barked. "We're conducting an inspection." I crossed my arms. "No, you're not. This is my property. You want access? Bring a warrant." Older Mantum, the HOA president, smirked. "Your HOA agreement grants us the right." "Wrong," I replied flatly. "You have no legal authority to enter private property without permission. If you force entry, you're trespassing," they muttered among themselves before storming off. I figured that was the end of it. I was wrong. The very next week, I was grilling in my backyard when I heard the metallic clink of my gate latch being lifted. My blood ran cold. The gate swung open, and in marched the same 3 HOA officers, Tom, Marjorie, and another guy I didn't recognize. That was the moment they made the biggest mistake of their lives. I set down the tongs and squared my shoulders. "Get out." My voice wasn't a shout, it was low, controlled, and carried the kind of authority that comes from years of military training. Marjorie rolled her eyes. "You can't stop us. We're authorized." That's when I stepped forward. "Just committed unlawful entry." "Do you know what that means?" Tom puffed up his chest. "You think you can intimidate us? We're the HOA." "Buddy," I said, advancing until I was just inches from his face. "I've stared down men with loaded weapons. You don't scare me. You're trespassing, and I'm giving you one chance to walk away before I have you all charged." Hesitated, but instead of backing off, the third guy shoved his clipboard at me. "Sign this acknowledgement of violation, or we'll fine you daily." I slapped the clipboard out of his hand, and it clattered onto the grass. "Last warning," I growled. "Leave. Now." Instead of leaving, Tom made the dumbest move possible. He tried to push past me. Instinct kicked in. In one swift motion, I sidestepped, grabbed his wrist, and twisted. He yelped, stumbling forward as I restrained him without even breaking a sweat. "Marine Corps training, sweetheart," I muttered, releasing him so he fell flat on his knees. "Now get out of my yard before I show you just how gentle I'm being," Marjorie gasped. "You assaulted him." "No," I corrected. "I defended my property from trespassers. And unless you want the cops involved, I suggest you leave. Right now." They finally retreated, muttering threats about lawsuits and legal action. I just watched them go, calm as ever. But I wasn't done. The very next day, I filed a police report for trespassing. I handed over the security camera. Footage crystal clear video of the HOA officers opening my gate and barging in without permission. The officer I spoke with raised his eyebrows. "Yeah, that's definitely illegal," he said. "Don't worry, we'll handle this." A week later, the HOA received a formal notice from law enforcement warning them against further trespass. That should have been the end of it. But these people weren't just entitled. They were arrogant. They doubled down. The HOA sent me a certified letter demanding $500 in fines for noncompliance and threatening to place a lien on my property. They even accused me of violent misconduct against their officers. That was it. The Marine in me doesn't back down from bullies. I lawyered up. My attorney nearly laughed when I showed him the footage and the letter. They don't have a legal leg to stand on, he said. In fact, we can sue them for harassment, trespass, and defamation. So that's exactly what we did. The courtroom showdown was glorious. The HOA officers sat smugly at their table until my lawyer rolled the footage on a projector. Gasps filled the room as everyone saw them force their way into my yard, only to be effortlessly disarmed when they tried to intimidate me. Marjorie's face turned crimson. Tom buried his head in his hands. The judge didn't mince words. The HOA has grossly overstepped its authority. Trespassing into a homeowner's property without consent is unlawful. This case is dismissed, and I'm ordering the HOA to cover the defendant's legal fees. But it didn't end there. The judge also approved our countersuit for harassment. The HOA ended up paying me $15,000 in damages money. I used to upgrade my backyard pergola and throw the loudest barbecue the neighborhood had ever seen. And yes, every single neighbor showed up, except the HOA board. Word spread fast. Suddenly, people who had been silent victims of the HOA's tyranny started speaking up. Turns out, I wasn't the only one they had bullied. One woman admitted they fined her for hanging a wind chime. Another guy said they threatened to tow his truck, even though he parked in his own driveway. The board's power crumbled within months. Homeowners voted Tom out. Marjorie quit in disgrace after people started mocking her at community meetings. The HOA was stripped down to a bare minimum, its officers nothing more than volunteers with no real authority. As for me, I became the unofficial hero of the neighborhood. Folks still stopped by to thank me for standing up, when everyone else was too scared. But here's the truth. I didn't do it for glory. I did it because bullies, whether in a war zone or in a suburban neighborhood, understand one thing: resistance. You give them an inch, they'll take a mile. But if you stand tall, if you refuse to be intimidated, they crumble. The HOA thought they could walk into my yard and flex their fake power. Instead, they learned the hard way that a Marine doesn't surrender his ground, not overseas, and certainly not at home. So now, every time I sit under that pergola with a cold drink in my hand, I smile. Not just because I won, but because I sent a message that echoed across the whole neighborhood. This is my home, and nobody, HOA or otherwise, pushes me around on my own land. For more interesting and heart-touching stories, hit the subscribe button now.